Good to be with everyone. Hope you're doing well. We've had a lot of questions about what the Pope is saying and what's coming out of the Vatican on immigration, on climate, on pro-abort politicians, etc. I want to clear up a few things and have a good discussion about it myself. So we call up someone that we know really well that's been at this for a while. Phil Lawler is going to be with us today. Phil's the founder of and director and editor of the Catholic World News that he founded in 1995. They provide daily headline news coverage for Catholic culture. So Phil's been at it for a while. I want to get his opinion on it. A little background. Phil is from the Boston area, went to Harvard College, did graduate work in political philosophy at the University of Chicago before entering a career in journalism. He has previously served as the director of studies for the Heritage Foundation, editor of Crisis Magazine, and editor of the international monthly magazine Catholic World Report. He's written 12 different books. He's working on a novel now, his first novel. He's got 7 children. He's got 22 grandchildren. He's a blessed guy. So hang on, buckle up, and we'll have him right back for today's episode. I want to ask you about Pope Leo XIV. We have a young audience joining us. Of course, we have a lot. This will go out to our whole audience, but we have a lot of young guys joining us from Claymore. I mentioned it to you earlier. Claymore is this big sword behind me. It's an apostolate for Gen Z men who voted for Trump, actually, Phil, but then wondered why. What do we do now? They found something was wrong, right? They could see it. They could sense it. We all can sense something. And now they're stepping into the church. Unfortunately, we are getting some confusion out of Pope Leo XIV. We thought we were done with that for a little while, Phil, after Francis. But I want to get your view on it and see if you can help us through this a little bit. You wrote an article, The Pope's Statement on the Durbin Award. So Supich here in Chicago, I'm outside of Chicago. Supich gave Dick Durbin, our senator from the state of Illinois, a Lifetime Achievement Award, and he is rabidly pro-choice, for abortions. He has been through his whole political career, and it made us sick. It really made us sick to our stomach. And then we were expecting Pope Leo, if anything, to help us out with this, but he didn't seem like he did. It seemed like he supported Supich. And we're a little confused about that. Shed some light on that for us from your perspective, will you, Phil?
Yeah, well, I was disappointed with what the Pope said, but if you look at it carefully, it's being interpreted as support for Durbin. It's not. What he's saying is well, it's really a variation on the seamless garment theme that Cardinal Bernardine introduced years and years ago. The idea that you're not really pro-life if you're for the death penalty. You're not really pro-life if you're against unlimited immigration. And I have a serious problem with that way of analysis because they're not the same sort of issues. But what Pope Leo did not say, you could put it the other way. You're not pro-life if you're not pro-life. You're not pro-life if you're pro-abortion. And the question before the House, as it were, was, should the Catholic Church be giving an award to someone who's pro-abortion? And the answer is no. So, I mean, if you parse it, if you look at it by the standards that Pope Leo set up, it would seem that the logical conclusion from what he said would be, don't give this award to Senator Durbin. But that's not the way anybody took it. And it's sort of predictable that nobody was going to take it that way, because he was deflecting attention from the fundamental problem, which is Durbin and Cardinal Supich. And it was an award that should never have been suggested. We had 10 American bishops already on the record as saying it should never have been suggested. We had reports that the U.S. Bishops' Conference was preparing a statement which would say the same thing, that he should not be given this award. And then the Pope steps in and says this, and it was confusing.
Yeah. If that was the only thing, Phil, and I don't know if you're okay if I take you there or not, But it was quickly followed by this climate. It's this pro-climate change thing in the
Right.
Vatican. And look, we all get it. We've been Catholics, so we've been talking Catholicism and Catholic social teaching on this program, et cetera, et cetera. We all know we have to protect the environment. We all know that God gave us those tasks to go and keep and till the garden. Obviously, we know that the globalists have been taking this climate exchange thing, flying around in their private jets, just really hypocritically, taking the money, taking the money. We all know this.
Right.
And here's Pope Francis did the same thing, in with the globalists with this. We thought we were done with that. What do you think about that? Pope Leo, Arnold Schwarzenegger was there, and all the celebrities again. The same, I'm just going to call it for what it is. It's just it's a garbage issue. It's something that the globalists take the control and the money, and we all know this. It's obvious to anybody with eyes and ears.
Yeah, to me, there's a lot of difference between the message that I heard for years from Pope Francis and what I'm hearing now from Pope Leo.
Okay.
And I'll be honest and say that what I'm hearing from Pope Leo on sort of political issues still makes me uncomfortable, but not nearly as uncomfortable as with Pope Francis. And I'm hoping that at least if Pope Leo is more consistent and more forthright about what the church actually teaches. I mean, as you say, we are here to be stewards of God's creation. And that really shouldn't be controversial. The problem comes out when church leaders seem to be endorsing what's a political agenda, and for that matter, even a scientific agenda. I know there are a lot of scientists who are telling us that humans are responsible for climate change. There are also a lot of scientists who are telling us that that's bunk. Now, this is a scientific argument. I'm not a scientist. I'm not going to get into this argument. And I think that it would be wise for bishops, including the Bishop of Rome, not to get into this argument because the Pope does not have any particular authority on scientific questions.
Yeah. Yeah. And how about immigration? I'll hit you with one more. Again, immigration, it seems pretty clear cut to us. Look at it. When I say clear cut, we have a lot of immigrants here. I have 4 grandparents from 4 different countries. But at the end of the day, you can't just have open borders, and we all understand that. There has to be some control. We're seeing, of course, what happened in the UK, in Europe, in Italy, France, Germany, when they've just opened the borders, and it's just chaos to the culture. We all understand this. You can't just bring every person with every kind of culture in to set up their own countries within our country. We have to have some unifying factors, and
Right.
we understand that. Without getting into the weeds on that, again, we thought we were done for a little while with the Pope Francis effect of just tear down those walls and let anybody in. And now we're kind of getting again that message. Is it the same message, Phil, or is it like you said, the other messages where you feel a little bit better about it? And we're looking for any hope you can give us, but we also want the truth, huh?
Yeah, well, again, the truth is I'm not going to be happy. I'm now convinced I'm not going to be happy with what Pope Leo says about immigration because of just the point that you make. I'm in favor of liberal, legal immigration. I'm in favor of letting people in, as many as we can accommodate, if what they want is to become Americans, to be assimilated into our culture. If what they want is to take freebies from Uncle Sam, then no, I'm not in favor of letting them in. But the crucial point you make is before you have any immigration policy, you have to control your borders. Otherwise, it doesn't matter what your policy is if people can just walk in.
Mm-hmm.
And we have not controlled our borders, and that's very high priority. It's not just for us, it's for the Western world generally. We have to control our borders and control and preserve our own culture, and we're not doing that very well.
Yeah, when we used to, vet immigrants as they came in, we liked everybody that's can build a better life to come here, to your point, and be, liberal on that thought. On the other hand, we're a nation, a Christian nation. It wasn't many decades, and I'm not talking about today, but certainly we were through history.
Yeah.
And that was what kept us together. Based on the Decalogue, on the Ten Commandments, on the virtues and values and laws coming out of the Bible, and certainly Christians. If we dilute this country with just anybody, and we see this in Europe, Phil, with Muslims and with other cultures, you can't assimilate all of those people.
No, you can't.
And they have to decide that they see what the United States, they see what America is about, and have to go along with that to some degree.
Right. And it's a judgment call.
Mm-hmm.
Every country, and here too, the Catholic Church has always been pretty clear that a country has the right to control its own borders and to preserve its own culture. So how many immigrants can you take in? And now, again, I'm talking about legal immigrants. I'm not talking about open borders. How many can you take in? That's obviously a judgment call, right? You might think more, I might think less. We can debate about that. It's not the sort of moral issue that you say, well, if you don't agree with me on this, then that shows you're not a good Catholic. Good Catholics could disagree on lots of issues, and this is one of them. And that's why I think you need some clarity on what does it mean to be pro-life. There are some issues that are judgment calls that we can debate about. There are some issues that are absolute, inherently evil actions that we cannot support no matter what, abortion being one of them.
Yeah, so for our younger audience coming in, you want to open up that seamless garment again just a little bit, just briefly, and just to allow them, so they're going to hear this more and more often, I think, Phil. So if you don't mind, just a couple minutes on that.
The idea was cooked up in the 1980s. It was Cardinal Bernardine. It was Governor Cuomo of New York, the first Governor Cuomo. And the idea was that we want to have a consistent ethic of life. That's the other phrase, the seamless garment and the consistent ethic of life. And that means that you're pro-life, and that means you're against abortion. It means you're pro-life, and so you're against euthanasia. It also means, according to these people, if you're pro-life, you're against the death penalty. If you're pro-life, you're for government welfare programs to help the poor. Now, do you see the discontinuity? Those arguments are not the same. When you tear an unborn child apart in its mother's womb, you are deliberately killing a human being. And deliberately killing a human being is always, always wrong. Period, full stop. Now, if you argue for one form of help for the poor and I argue for a different form of help for the poor, neither one of us is saying you should kill the poor. We're saying there are different ways in which to help the poor, and we disagree on them. That's the sort of argument that's healthy in a democratic society.
Yeah. What I think, Phil, it's when we look at all of these issues again, climate, immigration, abortion, all of these things, like you said, need to be clear. When you have a breakdown in our moral, ethical foundation, especially when it comes to issues like life, you go down a rabbit hole there, and you start to promote euthanasia. We promote death even of the mentally handicapped. We have young people now in Western countries that can now take their own lives, young people, because they say they're suffering from depression. When you start to twist God's laws into this mumbo jumbo of everything's the same, and don't set these priorities of life, that life from the moment of conception all the way through to natural death, just like John Paul and the popes before them were very clear on these issues. And you find out very quickly that when you start to twist and distort them just a little bit, the evil one is out there, and they'll take that as far as they can.
They will. And, well, let me say two things. First of all, if you're a young audience, should be reading things like Pope John Paul II, The Gospel of Life, Evangelium Vitae, or
Veritatis Splendor.
Right? Which makes the distinctions that we're trying to make here between some things that are judgment calls and some things that are really not judgment calls at all. The other point I try to make is If you want to try to be convincing about this seamless garment, this consistent ethic of life, I'd like to see you use it in both directions. And if you are Cardinal Cupich and you believe that immigration is the moral issue of our day, well, I disagree with you, but if you think that, then why don't you say, okay, I like what Durbin's doing on immigration, but I can't honor him because of his stand on abortion. At least there's a consistency there. It's never used consistently. The seamless garment is used to excuse politicians who support abortion, who support euthanasia, but are right in the eyes of liberal Democrats on other issues.
And it seems like the LGBTQ, especially same-sex marriage, all of this, these same people that support the seamless garment that don't really stand up for life in priority, like we're saying. It seems like, right on the side, they've all, whether explicitly or not, support same-sex marriage. Like I said, Pope Francis famously had Father James Martin in a number of different times with photo ops. And now I saw Pope Leo again, and you don't have to go there if you don't want to, Phil, but you see Pope Leo again there. And that, it's the photo ops. It's not that you shouldn't have people in the Vatican. That's up to the Pope. But these photo op opportunities and allow someone like a Father James Martin to come back into, on his platform and stuff and say, hey, I was just with Pope Leo the 14th and et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't matter what Pope Leo says because Father James Martin will say it and then say, hey, I'm friends with Pope Leo the 14th, just like I was with Pope Francis. And again, it's this confusion, Phil.
It's
this confusion. Can you imagine, Phil, and I'll just throw this back to you. If you're a young person, this is what I'm concerned about mostly, Phil. Young people coming in, they're on fire for the faith. And I just want to help them, wade through this confusion or maybe, and it's hard, but I'm trying to get them just to stop the noise coming, from the Vatican and stuff. But this is the Pope,
It is, and all I can say is try to separate the noise from the signal. One of the things in this award for Durbin is I think it was MSNBC, I might be wrong, a headline saying that the Pope had supported Durbin. Now, and Durbin was grateful for his support. Now, there is no way you can read what the Pope said as support for Durbin. Support for Cupich, maybe, but definitely not support for Durbin. And yet you sort of know that's the way it's going to be played because it was not a clear statement in the other direction. And we have enough problems with the media distorting what the Pope says. It's predictable how they will distort it. They will be in line with the LGBT agenda and with the climate control agenda. All I'm looking for is clarity from the Vatican, from the Pope on matters of faith.
We know, again, we're from Chicago. We all know Cupich very, very well. And if you want confusion, just listen to him long enough. And Pope Leo knows that, so to your point, he has to be very careful, even sending a strong signal that he supports Cupich. I was at pro-life rallies where Cupich was booed off the stage,
right?
In essence, because everybody knows, so Pope Leo has to know all that too, and I don't want to, put you in a place where you don't want to go or make a comment that you don't want to make a comment. But the Pope's no fool; he has to know all this stuff ahead of time, doesn't
he? Sure, he's from Chicago too.
Thank you. He came. He was just a few blocks away from where I grew up, and we were almost there at the same time. So yeah, he's aware of what's going on.
He is, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it, and I think I've been consistent here.
Yeah,
I don't think that you and I are going to be happy with what the Pope says on political issues, with what Pope Leo says. I think less unhappy than with Pope Francis, but still not happy. And now,
Phil, when you say less unhappy, and I'm looking for I'm looking for some optimistic points too. I don't want to just berate anybody. I was so excited that he took the name Leo. Here's from Pope Leo the 13th, that really put down Catholic social teaching so wonderfully, where John Paul and Centenimus Annos picked that up 100 years later and just brought it up to speed, and just this beauty, right? And I thought, ooh, we're going to get back to some good, solid stuff here. So when you say that, what do you see that's different, other than optics, original optics?
Oh, it's not
What do you
just
see
optics. Because of my work as a journalist, Catholic journalist, I have been reading what comes out of the Vatican pretty much every day for, I don't know, 30, 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a very big change with Pope Leo. What I see day to day, most of it is solid, some of it is beautiful. If you read his Wednesday public audiences, they're wonderful, wonderful teaching of fundamental Catholic material. And then he goes, when he gets into politics, I start going, I'm not so happy with this. But by and large, he's quoting Saint Augustine constantly, which you can't go too far wrong with that.
No.
And it seems to me that all of his instincts are to unite the church, and I'm hoping that with time, that instinct to unite the church will make him understand that there are a lot of people out there who have been hurt in the last dozen years by his predecessor, by Pope Francis, and need to be reassured, and need to have their confidence restored that the rug isn't going to be pulled out from them.
Yeah. Anything on the traditional Latin Mass?
That's going to be one of the issues where, as far as I can see, he does not have a strong. Pope Leo is not particularly strong one way or another on the Latin Mass. Now, unless you see the Latin Mass as a threat, which I think Pope Francis did, it just seems such a no-brainer to say, well, there's a large and growing number of people, especially young people, who are attached to the traditional liturgy. Why not just let them have it? So that's something I'll be watching. That, and there are some appointments to be made, and they'll probably be made this fall. There are a lot of prelates in the Roman Curia and in large cities, including Chicago, who are beyond retirement age, and let's see who he's appointing to take their place.
One of the things that we know, there's plenty of bishops, cardinals. We have good ones. We know we have good ones, but there's plenty of very poor, if not actually bringing some evil into their diocese. And when Pope Leo, if he's not clear on these things, as you know very well, and I'm saying this for our audience, these bishops and cardinals, if they're not really aligned with the church's teaching, they use that. Not only the Father James Martins of the world, but the prelates of the world use that to set up their own agenda.
Yeah.
And it's very clear to so many people. We have to, we got to clean up this, this mess. Look, I know it's big because Pope John Paul II, Pope Benedict, they all tried to clean up some of this. But it's big. The church is big. It's all over the world. But we need just clear voices. Maybe does he need a new marketing person or a communications person, Phil? Because I'm glad you said that about the Wednesday audiences. I got so kind of down. I decided not to read too much of his stuff, but maybe I should be.
Oh, I think you should on the Wednesday audiences particularly. But yeah, and he's having audiences every day with one group and another, and most of the time I think what he's saying is excellent. And this is
good
in marked contrast with Pope Francis, who it seems like every day he would say something else that looked like a personal criticism of Phil Lawler, and of course it doesn't make you feel like he's acting as a father to you.
Yeah.
But I think I get more of that feeling with Pope Leo, and I'm willing to give him a bit of a pass on the political issues because, after all, those are not the issues on which the Pope teaches authoritatively. It's a problem insofar as it's confusing because people are looking for the political. trying to
Well,
make it political.
what happens? And we work with the John Paul II Renewal Center. We work with a lot of parishes and a lot of pastors, a lot of priests, and they need that clarity for their own
Yes, they do.
congregation, because if you go to any parish, you have plenty of liberals within that parish that are Catholics for pro-choice and for gay marriage and all this kind of stuff. And these poor priests are beat up already. And the last thing they need to do is get thrown into any more confusion where they just want to throw up their hands and go on vacation. It's sad, really, sometimes.
It is. And after a dozen years of terrible confusion coming through the pontificate of Francis, we really need to catch our breath. And, some of us are shell-shocked, and we need to catch our breath. And a different kind of generation of Catholics is coming up behind us. And, hang on.
Let me ask you this, and our time is coming up, and I don't want to keep you too long, but those younger Catholics seem to get it anyways. I mean, that's
right.
That's the mystery of the church, isn't it? And the beauty of the church. And I want to get your comment on that. Vatican II, one of the big things, Phil, about Vatican II was the universal call of the laity to step up, right?
Right.
The universal call of holiness for the laity, but also to step up and do
Yes.
their part too.
Yes.
John Paul made it very clear that we're all priests, prophet, and kings. And we all have that. We don't have the ministerial role of a priest, but we have a role of a priest in our own homes, our own communities, etc. And we have to step up. And I think that's why when I'm working with young people, they have a sense that they want the truth, but somebody has to be out there proclaiming it to them. And I think we're going to have to all take on a role of learning our faith better, really take on it seriously, and proclaim it to these, and help these young people the best we can with the clearest voice that we can.
Absolutely. I think you're right on target there. Lay people, if you're not satisfied with what you see from bishops, and including the Pope, about how to solve the world's political problems, well, okay, give us some solutions. Lay people are supposed to be coming up with this. So let's hear those solutions. Let's see lay leadership that has a way to handle the problem of poverty, for instance. We all agree we'd like to do something to help the poor. How are we going to do it? Suggesting the same old, LBJ, big government programs, that's fallen flat. Or you could say it's made things worse. Let's come up with something better. And
and Phil, you and I will have to do a show on subsidiarity. And, there was, we were a generous people almost from the start here in the United States. And there's nothing better, just in essence, there's nothing better than, what happened with so many of these socialists. They are giving their money gladly to the government, and then they can walk away from these issues.
Right.
What the gospel calls us to is I need to not only give some money away, but I want to see where it happens. I want to be involved in that.
Yes.
And it's so beautiful the way that happens, and really need to get back to that. The problem is now with and look at Phil, I don't want to bring it down a rabbit hole now, but at the end here. But the problem is now the government is sucking so much of the money away because they've grown so big. You don't have much left to give anybody else, right? These poor kids trying to get into homes, paying these high property taxes and all these kind of things. We have to move away from socialism and neo-Marxism and communism. And again, 9 popes before Pope Francis spoke out against all those things. I'm writing a handbook right now for young people, and this is on my mind. That's why I brought it up. Probably.
Absolutely right, though.
Yeah, thank you.
And we need to do it ourselves. Stop asking government to do it. Stop asking the church to do it.
Yes.
We do it.
Yes. Phil, last question for you. How come a novel now at the end? All this writing, all of this work you've been doing, all this editing and political activism, and now we're going to write a novel. I'm very interested to hear.
Partly it was started out for fun.
Well, you have 22 grandchildren, right?
Yep.
So you're starting to think, maybe I got to start putting some novels together, or is it got nothing to do with it?
I think this might be my only novel, the only novel I have in me.
Is that right?
But partly was, I was deeply involved, as you know, in writing about the whole sex abuse scandal. And I learned a whole lot. And as a journalist, I try to keep high standards. If I can't prove it, if I can't demonstrate it, I'm not going to print it. But there's a lot that I know, that I'm morally certain that I know, that I can't print. And it's about corruption in the church, and it's sort of soft-core corruption. I'm not talking about the gross corruption that we saw exposed in the sex abuse scandal. I'm talking about the soft-core corruption, which is behind the scenes of what we've been talking about for the last half hour, which is it's a corruption of the faith. It's treating the faith as secondary and treating things of this world as primary. And I think over the years I've learned a lot about how the church works and the traps that people fall into, and that's what my novel is about.
Wow. Wow, I like that. Hey, let me know when it's ready to be published. We'll have you back on. I think it's coming up in a month or so, right?
It is. It's coming out in November, and I'm
do you know the date? Is somebody publishing it for you?
Yeah, Sophia Press is publishing it.
Okay. All right.
Date is, I think, November 17th. It's somewhere around there. It's coming soon.
Yeah, well, Sophia will probably get a hold of me because they send me a list of authors, to decide if I want to interview somebody. So I'll watch for your name.
I think. Well, I hope you'll enjoy it if you get a chance. I think it's not probably what people expected of me, but the people a lot of friends who've read the draft have enjoyed it, and some have said very nice things about it. So
beautiful, beautiful. Well, Phil, thank you so much. Phil Lawler, everyone. Phil, give us a little heads up on you and your wife. I know you're on Twitter. You have a website. Give us a couple on the way out here, will you?
Sure. Well, you can look me up on Substack, and my wife, Lila Marie Lawler, who I think has been on your show.
Yes, she has.
She has her Substack, and together we do our podcast, which is called The Homefront, which you can also find on Substack. So, excuse me, just getting over a cold. So that's the place to look for me now these days.
Okay, great. We will. Well, I'm going to let everybody else go, and you hang on just for a second, will you? Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.